Through the valley of trash he commenced. He needed to find some answers to his questions, marching up the hill and climbing the fenced areas and enclosures that warned him to stay out. But now there was very little he wasn't ready to go against. After he'd run into the man at the paper stand, who said all your problems can be condensed into a single point of nothing by a single man. Who could this man be, our wanderer asked. The paperstand man said first he had to buy a magazine, so he flipped through a few of them and passed to the one that had next month's winners in its pages. So he dug out some dollar coins to get the forecast, and the paperstand man smiled, pointed upward, and then he said, "On the hill, do you see the mast? There's a monk up there that's figured it all out." He spent the last 13 years thinking about life, and now he has a recipe to fix all humanity. He did it by meditating, studying, and throwing off his wife. They say he has ascended to the next level. No taxis or buses can get you on the mountain. There are no roads, just a jagged elevated path. If you take it up far enough, you'll find the fountain. Drink it up because it's the last chance you'll get. So keep all your fingers poised to count in. But what do I need to bring? Flowers, wine, or a coin? He asked, "What exactly is a mountain?" $3.50, but I can't tell you the rest. His thighs ached, his feet blistered, and his back bent. He forsook his fellow men, seeing not another one. All the wild animals gathered as they picked up his scent. He couldn't make it another hour this way, but there was no shortcut or cheat to crawl through the vent, so he fashioned his walking stick into a bully club, keeping away all the evil spirits that hell sent. Only boredom and visions and mirages greeted him. As he rounded a corner in yet another switchback, he saw a little church and getaway resort. "Narrow, narrow," he called as he ran up the track. "To get where you're going, you need a bigger bottle than that," said the priest who met him and took his pack. Once the collapsed man revived and was able to speak, he thanked the priest dressed all in black. Then he asked where in the world he was at. "That really depends," said the priest, "on where you're going." The man told him, "I'm going to the place where I can be made fresh, clean, and meet the all-knowing." "Oh yes," said the priest, "I'd say you're 10% there." "Oh, how can I be so far? That's not what the map's showing." "This is uncharted territory, my friend," said the priest. "Here's the one place where with land we are overflowing. You better rest now because tomorrow will be the longest." The priest discussed with the traveler various subjects. "I don't want to talk about religion today. It's all I ever do from one day to the next. I'd quit this job, but then I'd lose my donkey, and I'd sure miss the fill of those checks. But I'd be happy to give you all my opinions. I'm a little out of the loop. What's going on with Malcolm X?" The man broke the news to the priest and got up. He began to move on, realizing that it was time. He climbed up the rocks and fell into a ditch. His teeth broken, his body now covered in slime. He could only get up, brush himself off, and focus on his goal of the changing paradigm. He had to find the next station rather quickly, preferably before the church bells he left behind began to chime. His water was low, his stomach empty, and his spirit was broken. With no food, no water, no floor, dustpan. His only path was forward, linear as time moves. So he took his steps so fast, it was as if he had ran. Nothing was stopping him now, the determined traveler. The paths were bad and the signs didn't work. He passed the time by counting from 1 to 100 again. In the shadows, all his friends and villains lurk. He knelt for some god to direct his judgment, but the only answer was the way the trees above him jerk. He took a deep breath and put one foot in front of another, knowing that his only permission was his duties to shirk. To life, country, family, and history he was absent. Up ahead were tall, whitewashed walls. A stern, frowning face that said there's no vacancy here. A governmental project that placed towers formed into balls. The sign on the door was not written in English or Hindi, so he knocked on the door and floated down the halls. The never-ending labor took him from one reality to another, fragmenting each of his spirits into separate stalls, feeling that each organ of his body from him had been ripped. In the last hall sat a man cross-legged and alone. He really did seem to glow and be written by angels. Above was a swirling pattern that congregated on his throne. His eyes were closed and traveler's presence was not acknowledged. In his pocket the wanderer felt for a stone, to place it at the king's feet or toss it on the ground. They sat in silence until the monk let out a groan, perhaps a cry of impatience or cry of an unbearable pain. Finally he spoke. Left to lock, right to unlock, or maybe, actually, it's the other way around. Exit is on the left, and on the right is chalk. Draw a circle around yourself and plunge right in. Swim until you reach the large metallic-coated clock, and when you've conquered space, you can fight yourself. With what's remaining, build yourself a yellow smock. Now twirl into the ball of a green glass snake. "I didn't quite catch that. I don't understand," said the traveler in a voice of exhaustion. The monk closed his eyes and raised up his hand. The wanderer collapsed from his knees to the floor. He could do nothing except weep into the pit of sand. He had failed to get his answers and would not make it down. His only hope was to permanently fall into dreamland, perhaps the same one we've all found ourselves trapped in.